When the hour came, Jesus and his apostles reclined at the table, and he said to them, I have eagerly desired to eat this Passover with you before I suffer. For I tell you, I will not eat again until it finds fulfillment in the kingdom of God.
Jesus used to come by every chance he got. Here lately, things was buzzing like a bee tree. So many people wanted to see him, be touched by him. The poor man barely had time to rest. He knew our door was always open and there'd be a hot meal waiting for him. There was always lots of laughter when Jesus was with us. My, oh my, the stories that man could tell. Sometimes we'd laugh so hard we was close to tears. But you know, when my brother died and Jesus wasn't there, I just didn't know what to think. Like to worry us to death it did. Why wouldn't he want to be here with us? And then after the funeral was over and company had gone, well, then there he was. I told him right out, if you'd been here, Brother Lazarus wouldn't have died. We took him out to the grave and he cried. Oh, how he loved my brother. Oh. Lazarus always said he would do anything for Jesus. Anything. Well, here was Jesus, and he was just weeping. And then he told us to roll away the stone. I said, land's sake, Lord, there's bound to be a smell. Why don't you just come on down the house and we'll have a bite to eat? And then I just couldn't believe my eyes. Here come our Lazarus right up out of that cave, like to scare me to pieces. Then we was all laughing and crying at the same time, and Jesus said, well, don't just stand there. Take them bandages off of him. Oh, my, that was a fine day it was. Well, now he's gone off to the city. I worry about him. Something was troubling him last time he was with us. My boy, he just don't take good care enough of himself. Oh, Lord. Lord, have mercy.
After taking the cup, he gave thanks and said, Take this and divide it among you. For I tell you, I will not drink again from the fruit of the vine until the kingdom of God comes. And he took bread, gave thanks, and broke it, and gave it to them, saying, This is my body given to you. Do this in remembrance of me. In the same way, after the supper, he took the cup, saying, This cup is the new covenant in my blood, which is poured out for you. But the hand of him who is going to betray me is with mine on the table. The Son of Man will go as it has been decreed. But woe to that man who betrays him. They began to question among themselves which of them it might be who would do this.
This wasn't supposed to happen. He could have stood up for himself, at least. Jesus, what were you thinking? One word from you and everything would have been fine. You know what the crowds are like in Jerusalem during Passover? Pilate certainly does, with his shining legion marching into the east gate as our ragged crowd cheered you from the west. We may not have looked like much. But all those folks, all they needed was a bit of encouragement from you, and they would have fought. We could have gathered a mighty company of fighters in a matter of hours, a day or a week. We would have shown Rome what we're made of. Instead, I can't get it out of my head. I turned you in. I was sure you would finally fight back. Even Peter had enough backbone to bring a sword and try to defend you. And what did you do? Asked the guards who they were looking for, as if they were looking for a lost child. You looked at me. You looked through me, straight down to my soul. Where was your anger? Where was your outrage? For God's sakes, Jesus, I betrayed you. I couldn't get your face out of my mind even now. I can't breathe. The soldiers were so confused, they practically fell over one another. And you just handed yourself over. What kind of Messiah does that? What kind of Messiah are you, Jesus? Can you hear me? Jesus? What kind of Messiah would just allow himself to be taken and put to death? And I wasn't the only one who betrayed you. Where were all your favorites when it came to standing before Pilate? Where were you, Peter? Where were you, James and John, so arrogant about wanting to be at your right or your left? Where were you? God have mercy on my soul for what I've done. God have mercy on us all.
When he had finished praying, Jesus left with his disciples and crossed the Kidron Valley. On the other side there was a garden, and he and his disciples went into it. Now Judas, who betrayed him, knew the place, because Jesus had often met there with his disciples. So Judas came to the garden, guiding a detachment of soldiers and some officials from the chief priests and the Pharisees. They were carrying torches, lanterns, and weapons. Jesus, knowing all that was going to happen to him, went out and asked them, "Who is it you want?" "Jesus of Nazareth," they replied. "I am he," Jesus said. And Judas the traitor was standing there with them. When Jesus said, "I am he," they drew back and fell to the ground. Again he asked them, "Who is it you want?" "Jesus of Nazareth," they said. Jesus answered, "I told you that I am he. If you are looking for me, then let these men go." This happened so that the words he had spoken would be fulfilled. "I have not lost one of those you gave me." Then Simon Peter, who had a sword, drew it and struck the high priest's servant, cutting off his right ear. The servant's name was Malchus. Jesus commanded Peter, "Put your sword away. Shall I not drink the cup the Father has given me?"
All of us were looking forward to Passover. Jesus and his men had been traveling for weeks, and the crowds just kept getting bigger and bigger, and people were coming from miles around just to be healed. It just could break your heart to see them, the broken, the lonely, the sick, the outcast. Jesus hardly had a spare minute to himself to eat or rest or pray. And when the disciples told us he intended to go to Jerusalem for Passover, well, some of us women decided to come along because we just wanted to make sure they had a proper Seder. Jesus was quieter than usual that day. Most times he comes into the kitchen while we're cooking and tells us stories of the day. sometimes he gets us laughing so hard that we have to shoo him out of the kitchen so we can finish cooking. And we pretend to scold him when he tries to snatch a taste. But this day, there was no stories. There was no laughter. The men seemed on edge. Little arguments would break out and suddenly stop. We thought perhaps it was just the weariness of travel. The meal was prepared and all was ready when Jesus surprised all of us. He started washing the disciples' feet. We told him we'd be happy to do it. We told him that, but he said no. This was something that he had to do. The room became quiet as he knelt down and held the travel-weary feet in his hands. And soon all you could hear was the splash of the water as Jesus washed their feet one by one. It was a strange meal. There was no laughter, no singing or teasing, just the words of Haggadah and subdued voices. By the time they had left and finished eating and they went to go pray, we women felt so uneasy. We began to clean up and really had little to say to one another. A strange mood cast its pall over all of us. We had just finished clearing things away when one of the men came running in to tell us that Jesus had been arrested. Without thinking, we all just ran to the garden, but no one was there, and we didn't know where to go, so we just returned to the house. By ones and twos, the men found their way back, but where was Jesus? Why weren't they with him? Jesus would have never deserted any one of us like this. What kind of disciples are you? But shame and grief etched years upon their faces. We all wept. What were we to do? Lord, have mercy.
Simon Peter and another disciple were following Jesus. Because this disciple was known to the high priest, he went with Jesus into the high priest's courtyard. But Peter had to wait outside the door. The other disciple, who was known to the high priest, came back to spoke with a servant girl on duty there and brought Peter in. "You aren't one of this man's disciples too, are you?" she asked Peter. He replied, "I am not." It was cold, and the servants and officials stood around a fire they had made to keep themselves warm. Peter also was standing there with them, warming himself.
Oh my God. What have I done? How many hours ago was it? What a fool I was to brag that even if everyone else deserted you, that I, Simon, would stand by you to the death. You called me your rock, remember? I was so proud of that. You could count on me no matter what. I was so certain of my courage, my love for you. But where was I when you needed me most? Trying to save my own skin. I don't know what is worse, discovering what I'm made of or realizing you knew what I was made of all along. You were right about me. How many times have I denied you? Today was surely not the first. I thought I was more faithful, more dedicated than the rest. I wanted to be the favored one. It was all a kind of denial. I can see that now. Even when I was confessing you to be the Messiah, I spoke not so much out of devotion as a desire to stand out, to be noticed, to be your right-hand man. didn't even have a chance to speak to you, to tell you, to beg for your forgiveness for my weakness. Oh, Jesus. Oh, Jesus, I don't know how I can even face the rest. How can I continue living knowing that when you most needed my friendship, my loyalty, I turned away? My mouth feels filthy. My own words condemn me. Oh, God, have mercy. Jesus, have mercy. God, have mercy.
Meanwhile, Simon Peter was still standing there warming himself. So they asked him, "You aren't one of his disciples too, are you?" He denied it, saying, "I am not." One of the high priest's servant, a relative of the man whose ear Peter had cut off, challenged him, "Didn't I see you with him in the garden?" Again Peter denied it, and at that moment a rooster began to crow. Then the Jewish leaders took Jesus from Caiaphas to the palace of the Roman governor. By now it was early morning, and to avoid ceremonial uncleanliness they did not enter the palace because they wanted to be able to eat the Passover. So Pilate came out to them and asked, "What charges are you bringing against this man?" "If he were not a criminal," they replied, "we would not have handed him over to you." Pilate said, "Take him yourself and judge him by your own law." "But we have no right to execute anyone," they objected. This took place to fulfill what Jesus had said about the kind of death he was going to die. Pilate then went back inside the palace, summoned Jesus, and asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" "Is that your own idea?" Jesus asked. "Or did others talk to you about me?" "Am I a Jew?" Pilate replied. "Your own people and chief priests handed you over to me. What is it you have done?" Jesus said, "My kingdom is not of this world. If it were, my servants would fight to prevent my arrest by the Jewish leaders. But now my kingdom is from another place." "You are a king, then?" said Pilate. Jesus answered, "You say that I am a king. In fact, the reason I was born and came into the world is to testify to the truth. Everyone on the side of truth listens to me." "What is truth?" retorted Pilate. With this he went out again to the Jews gathered there and said, "I find no basis for a charge against him."
I knew this could happen. I'd been trying to tell them for weeks. Even Peter the optimist knew how dangerous it was for us to come to Jerusalem this time of year. Every year it's the same thing. Some hot-headed zealots try something when the city is filled with pilgrims who are just trying to celebrate Passover. And Pilate, he sends in troops to smash a few heads. This year he wasn't taking any chances. He led the troops into town himself, all shining metal and polished leather. It took hours for the dust to settle once they had arrived at the fortress. Maybe we could have come into town quietly and celebrated a private Seder meal together. But no, that wasn't how Jesus did things. Before he knew what was happening, we were in the middle of this enormous crowd of people who were throwing their cloaks and branches in front of the colt that he was riding. And then all of us got caught up in the thing, laughing and shouting and throwing down branches that we snatched from the side of the road. It felt glorious until I came to myself. There was no way that Pilate's spies could ignore something like that. Oh, Jesus, my dear friend, why? You practically threw the challenge in Pilate's face. Why couldn't you tone things down a bit? A few days in the city and we could have quietly gone back into the Galilee. All that talk about a new kingdom, it wouldn't have mattered to Pilate what kind of kingdom you were talking about. Even the king of fruits and vegetables would be a threat. No. I want to see God's rule as much as anybody. But you know as well as I do, no Roman prefect could have ignored any possible threat to his hold over our people. All he cares about is his own power. He couldn't risk looking the other way, even for you. Dear friend, my friend, you were never afraid to speak God's truth, to shake things up. Shepherds or Pharisees, it didn't matter. But most people, especially those who rule over us, don't really want truth. They just want today to be just like yesterday. I wish you had listened. But avoiding opposition is not your way. And I guess I wouldn't want it any other way. But I wish I had been stronger. I wish I had stood with you before the elders and in front of Pilate. Not a week ago, it was I who told everyone you should come to Jerusalem with you to die alongside you. Such brave words. It all happened so fast. One minute we were praying, and the next, I ran. Just ran, like all the rest. Forgive us, Jesus. We all failed you. Oh God, have mercy on all of us. Oh God, who will save us now?
Near the cross of Jesus stood his mother's sister, Mary, the wife of Clopas, and Mary Magdalene. When Jesus saw his mother there and the disciple whom he loved standing nearby, he said to her, "Woman, here is your son." And to the disciple, "Here is your mother." From that time on, this disciple took her into his home. Later, knowing that everything had now been finished, and so that scripture would be fulfilled, Jesus said, "I am thirsty." A jar of wine vinegar was there, so they soaked a sponge in it, put the sponge on a stalk of the hyssop plant, and lifted it to Jesus' lips. When he had received the drink, Jesus said, "It is finished." With that he bowed his head and gave up his spirit.
I remember holding you when you were born. I unwrapped you from all those tightly bound clothes. I counted your fingers and your toes. I saw how perfect you were, how beautiful your face was. God gave you to me, Mary, to raise. And how grateful I've been that you are part of my life. You were always such a mystery, though. Even as a little boy, you understood things in a way I never could. And your prayers, they seemed to go to a place that I didn't understand until I had raised you. It was hard for me to let go of you when your father died. But I knew God had such plans for you. If I had known the outcome, I don't think I could have borne letting you leave home. I watched you that day. The day they hung you for your goodness, your compassion, your love, your forgiveness. The others were afraid, or maybe they just couldn't watch. But I had to. I had to stay right there until you took your last breath. And then I stayed. I stayed even a little bit longer than that. My life feels so empty right now. I don't understand Why this? This had to be the ending. Why? God of love, do you hear me? Why? Why did you send him to me, to all of us, and allow him to be tortured and killed? No! No, why? This can't be part of your grand plan. No! Why not take me? Why? Why would you take Jesus, my beloved son, your beloved son? Why, oh God? Lord, in your mercy, help me. Help me to understand.
Taking Jesus' body, the two of them wrapped it with spices in strips of linen. This was in accordance with Jewish burial customs. At the place where Jesus was crucified, there was a garden, and in the garden a new tomb, in which no one had ever been laid. Because it was the Jewish day of preparation, and since the tomb was nearby, they laid Jesus there.